The cold November wind cut through Penelope Bradford's thin cotton dress as she lay crumpled in the dirt behind the barn, tasting blood and feeling the throb of fresh bruises blooming across her ribs. The stars above blurred through her swelling eye, and she wondered if this time her brothers had finally gone too far, if dawn would find her frozen body rather than her broken spirit. She had dared to speak against their plan to sell their late father's land to pay gambling debts, and Raymond and Thomas had answered with their fists, dragging her outside after the beating and leaving her like discarded trash in the November night of 1883. The hours passed in waves of pain and cold that seeped into her bones. Penelope tried to move several times, but her body refused to cooperate, and the world spun violently whenever she lifted her head. She thought of her mother, dead these past 3 years, and wondered if she would see her soon. The Bradford ranch stretched empty around her, isolated enough that her screams had gone unheard, far enough from Trinity, Texas, that no neighbor would come investigating. Her brothers had ridden off hours ago, probably to the saloon in town, leaving her to whatever fate the cold night would bring. She drifted in and out of consciousness, losing time to the darkness and pain. The sky began to lighten almost imperceptibly at first, the black giving way to deep blue, then gradually to the pale gold of approaching dawn. Penelope heard hoofbeats in the distance, but her throat was too raw to call out, and she could not tell if the sound was real or imagined. Zachary Garrett reined in his horse as the sun crested the horizon, painting the Texas landscape in shades of amber and rose. He had been riding through the night after delivering a herd to San Antonio, eager to return to his own small ranch outside Trinity. The Bradford place sat quiet in the early light, but something caught his eye near the barn, a splash of pale fabric that did not belong among the brown earth and weathered wood. He urged his horse closer, and his heart seized in his chest when he realized what he was seeing. A woman lay motionless on the ground, her dress torn and dirty, her face a canvas of bruises. Zachary was off his horse before conscious thought caught up with instinct, dropping to his knees beside her. Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was rough from the long night, but gentle as he carefully touched her shoulder. Penelope's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with pain. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound emerged. "Do not try to talk," Zachary said, his trained eye taking in the extent of her injuries with growing fury. Someone had done this deliberately, systematically. "I am going to carry you inside. This might hurt, but I need to get you warm." He slid his arms beneath her as carefully as possible, lifting her against his chest. She was light, too light, and she trembled against him like a wounded bird. Zachary stood slowly, cradling her close, and walked toward the ranch house. The front door stood unlocked, swinging open at his push. Inside, the house was cold and empty, the fire in the hearth long dead. Zachary carried Penelope to a bedroom, laying her gently on the quilt-covered bed. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and he counted that as a blessing. He had seen men die from beatings less severe than what this woman had endured. "I need to get you warm and check your injuries," he said, though he was not certain she could hear him. "I am going to start a fire and get some water heating." Zachary worked quickly, his movements efficient from years of handling emergencies on the trail. He got the fire blazing in the bedroom hearth, then went to the kitchen to pump water and set it heating. He found clean cloths and brought them back, along with whiskey from the cabinet for cleaning wounds. When he returned to the bedroom, Penelope's eyes were open, watching him with a mixture of fear and confusion. "My name is Zachary Garrett," he said, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "I was riding past at dawn and found you outside. Who did this to you?" Her split lip trembled as she tried to form words. "My brothers," she finally whispered, each syllable clearly causing pain. Rage flooded through Zachary, hot and immediate, but he kept his voice calm. "Where are they now?" "Town. Saloon." She closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her bruised cheek. "They will come back." "Then we have time to tend to you," Zachary said. "Can you tell me where you hurt the most?" "Everywhere," Penelope breathed, attempting something like a smile that turned into a wince. Over the next hour, Zachary worked with careful hands to clean her wounds and assess the damage. He had learned field medicine out of necessity during his years as a trail boss, and he was grateful for that knowledge now. Her ribs were likely cracked, her face badly bruised, and she had numerous cuts and scrapes. But nothing appeared life-threatening if infection could be prevented. "You are going to be all right," he told her, meeting her eyes with steady certainty. "You need rest and time to heal, but you will recover." "Why are you helping me?" Penelope asked, her voice barely audible. "You do not know me." Zachary paused in wrapping her ribs, considering the question. "Because it is the right thing to do, because no woman deserves this." "Because I happened to ride by at dawn, and I believe that means something." Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the wall of pain and fear. "I am Penelope Bradford. This is my family's ranch. Was my father's before he died last spring. Your brothers inherited, all three of us did. But Raymond and Thomas, they think because they are men, the ranch belongs to them alone." Bitterness crept into her weak voice. "They want to sell it. I said no. They convinced me with their fists." Zachary's jaw tightened. "They cannot sell without your consent. The law would not allow it." "The law," Penelope laughed, a harsh sound that turned into a cough. "The law in Trinity does whatever Raymond wants. He has the sheriff in his pocket through gambling debts and favors. No one will help me." "I will," Zachary said simply. She stared at him, searching his face. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of Texas earth after rain. There was strength in the line of his jaw and kindness in the set of his mouth. She wanted to believe him, but trust had been beaten out of her the night before. "You should go," she whispered. "Before they return, they will hurt you too. Let them try." Zachary stood, rolling down his sleeves. "But you are right that we need to be prepared. Is there a gun in this house?" Penelope directed him to her father's rifle above the mantel and the pistol in the desk drawer. Zachary checked both weapons, ensuring they were loaded and functional. Then he returned to her side. "You need to rest now. I will be right here, and I will wake you if anyone comes." "You need rest too," Penelope said, seeing the exhaustion in the lines of his face. "You said you rode all night." "I will sleep later. Right now, you are more important." She wanted to argue, but her body was already pulling her down into sleep. The last thing she felt was the warm weight of an extra blanket being laid over her, and the quiet assurance of Zachary's presence nearby. When Penelope woke, the sun was high and bright through the window. Panic seized her briefly until she saw Zachary sitting in a chair he had pulled near the bed, his eyes closed but his posture alert, like a man who had learned to sleep lightly or not at all. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes opened immediately. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I was trampled by a horse," Penelope admitted. "But better than I should, thanks to you." Zachary rose and brought her water, helping her sit up enough to drink without choking. The simple act of swallowing hurt, but the water was cool and clean, washing away the taste of blood and dust. "I have been thinking about your situation," Zachary said once she had drunk her fill. "You cannot stay here, not with your brothers likely to return. Do you have anywhere else to go? Family, friends?" Penelope shook her head slowly, each movement a reminder of her injuries. "No family except Raymond and Thomas. My mother's people are all back east, and I have not seen them since I was a child." As for friends, most women in Trinity are afraid to associate with me. My brothers have made sure I am isolated. Then you will come to my ranch. Zachary said it as a statement, not a question. It is small, just me and my cattle, but there is a spare room and you will be safe there while you heal. I cannot ask you to do that. You have already done so much. You did not ask, I offered. Zachary's expression was firm but not unkind. And before you argue about propriety or reputation, understand that I care more about keeping you alive than what gossips might say. Penelope felt something warm unfold in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. Why are you doing this? Truly? Zachary was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the Texas landscape. 5 years ago, I had a sister. Sarah was her name, and she was bright and kind and saw the good in everyone. She married a man we thought was decent, but he turned cruel once the vows were spoken. She hid it well, always had an explanation for every bruise. Then one day, there were no more excuses to make because he killed her in a drunken rage. His voice remained steady, but Penelope could see the old pain in his eyes. I was away on a cattle drive when it happened, Zachary continued. I have spent every day since wishing I had been there, wishing I had seen the signs, wishing I could have saved her. I cannot bring Sarah back. But when I saw you lying in that dirt this morning, I knew I had been given a chance to do for you what I could not do for her. Penelope reached out, ignoring the protest of her battered body, and touched his hand. I am sorry about your sister, but her death is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible. Maybe not. But I am responsible for what I do now in this moment with the choices in front of me, and I choose to help you. He met her eyes. If you will let me. I will let you, Penelope said softly, and I am grateful beyond words. They spent the rest of the day preparing for her departure. Zachary helped Penelope pack a bag with her belongings, clothing, and a few precious items that had belonged to her mother. He saddled one of the horses from the Bradford barn, choosing a gentle mare that would not jostle Penelope too much during the ride. He also took the time to write a note explaining that Penelope was under his protection, and that anyone who wished to contest that fact could find him at the Garrett Ranch 3 miles northeast of Trinity. As afternoon shadows grew long, Penelope heard the sound she had been dreading. Hoofbeats approaching, 2 horses moving at a gallop. Her brothers were returning. Zachary heard them too. Stay in the bedroom and keep quiet, he instructed, his voice calm but commanding. I will handle this. They are dangerous, Penelope warned, fear making her voice shake. So am I, when I need to be. Zachary checked the pistol at his hip and picked up the rifle. Do not worry. Raymond and Thomas Bradford burst through the front door with the careless confidence of men who believed themselves untouchable. They were both large, running to fat but still strong, with their father's broad shoulders and their mother's cold eyes. They stopped short when they saw Zachary standing in the center of their parlor, rifle held with easy competence. Who the hell are you? Raymond demanded. He was the older of the two, with a thick beard and hands scarred from brawling. Zachary Garrett, I am a friend of your sister. Thomas laughed, a mean sound. Penelope does not have friends. Where is she? Somewhere you will never touch her again, Zachary said, his tone flat and dangerous. Raymond's face darkened. That is none of your business. She is our sister, and what happens in this family stays in this family. Now get out before we throw you out. I found her at dawn, left in the dirt like trash, beaten nearly to death. I would say that makes it my business. Zachary's grip on the rifle tightened. And I am not going anywhere, but you are. Pack whatever you need and get off this ranch. You are not welcome here anymore. This is our land, Thomas snarled, taking a step forward. The rifle came up smoothly, aimed at his chest. Not according to your father's will. This ranch belongs to all three of you, which means Penelope has just as much right to it as you do. More, since she actually cares about the land rather than just the money it might bring. You cannot protect her forever, Raymond said, his voice dropping to something uglier than a shout. Eventually, she will be alone, and we will make her pay for this betrayal. If you ever come near her again, if you ever so much as speak her name with ill intent, I will make sure you regret it. Zachary's voice was steady, but there was iron beneath the calm. I am not some defenseless woman you can bully and beat. I am a man who has spent years on the trail, dealing with rustlers and outlaws and every kind of trouble you can imagine. Do you really want to find out what happens when you push me? The Bradford brothers exchanged glances, calculating odds and finding them suddenly less favorable than expected. This is not over, Raymond finally said, but he took a step backward. Yes, it is. Your sister is done with you. Now leave. They left, but not without dark looks and muttered threats. Zachary watched from the window until they were out of sight, then went to the bedroom where Penelope sat on the edge of the bed, trembling but determined. I heard everything, she said. Thank you. We should go now, before they decide to come back with reinforcements. Zachary offered his hand. Can you ride? I can do whatever I need to do, Penelope said, taking his hand and letting him help her stand. The ride to Zachary's ranch took over an hour, with Penelope gritting her teeth against the pain of every jostle and bump. Zachary kept his horse close to hers, ready to catch her if she started to fall. The sun was setting when they finally arrived at a modest but well-maintained homestead, a single-story house with a barn and corral, surrounded by grazing land that stretched toward the horizon. Zachary helped Penelope down from the saddle and into the house, settling her in the spare bedroom with the same careful gentleness he had shown all day. The room was simple but clean, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the land. Rest now, he said. I will make something for supper. Over the following days, a routine developed. Zachary tended his cattle and horses, handled the endless work of running a ranch, and cooked simple but nourishing meals. Penelope rested, her body slowly beginning to heal under his watchful care. He changed the bandages on her wounds, brought her willow bark tea for the pain, and sat with her in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. She learned that he had come to Texas from Missouri after the war, that he had built his ranch from nothing through hard work and careful saving. He loved the land with a quiet passion, spoke of his cattle like old friends, and read books in the evenings when work was done. He was nothing like the rough, crude men she had grown up around, nothing like her brothers or the cowboys who came to town drunk and looking for trouble. Zachary learned that Penelope could read Latin and do figures in her head, that her father had educated her as thoroughly as any son despite her brother's objections. She knew ranching and loved it, had ideas about breeding better cattle and managing the land more efficiently. She dreamed of a life where her opinions mattered, where she could make decisions and be respected for her mind rather than dismissed for her gender. As November turned to December, something shifted between them. It was in the way Zachary's hand would linger when helping her stand, the way Penelope's eyes followed him when he moved around a room. It was in the comfortable silences and the conversations that stretched late into the night, in the laughter they shared and the stories they told. One evening, as they sat before the fire, Penelope said, I need to go back to the ranch, not to stay but to settle things properly. My brothers cannot be allowed to sell the land out from under me. I know, Zachary said. I have been thinking about that. We should go to the lawyer in Trinity, make sure the will is properly registered and that your rights are protected. Then we can figure out a permanent solution. What kind of solution? Zachary hesitated, then met her eyes. You could sell your portion to someone trustworthy. Or you could buy out your brothers if you had the means. Or you could take a partner who would help you run the ranch properly." "A partner," Penelope repeated softly. "Is that what we are becoming, partners?" "I do not know what we are becoming," Zachary admitted. "I only know that I look forward to seeing you every morning, that I think about you when I am out working the land, that I want to hear your thoughts and your laughter. I know that when I imagine my future now, you are in it." Penelope's breath caught. "I feel the same way." "But it has only been a few weeks. How can we be certain?" "Maybe we cannot be certain. Maybe that is what faith is, taking a step forward even when you cannot see the whole path." Zachary moved closer, taking her hand. "I am not asking you to decide anything tonight. I am just telling you that when you are ready, when you are healed and strong and have had time to think clearly, I would like to court you properly, with flowers and Sunday dinners and all the things a woman deserves." "I do not need flowers," Penelope said, her voice thick with emotion. "I need someone who sees me as an equal, who respects my mind as much as my heart. I need someone who will stand beside me, not in front of me or behind me, but beside me." "Then that is what I will be," Zachary promised. They went to Trinity 3 days later, riding together in the cold December morning. The town was bustling with pre-Christmas activity, people shopping and visiting and going about their lives. Penelope drew stairs, her bruises still visible though fading, but she held her head high as Zachary escorted her to the lawyer's office. Mr. Harrison was an older gentleman who had handled her father's affairs for years. He listened gravely as Penelope explained the situation, his expression growing darker as she detailed her brother's actions. "This is unacceptable," he said when she finished. "Your brothers have no legal right to force a sale, and they certainly have no right to assault you. I will file papers immediately to ensure your portion of the ranch is protected." "Is there any way I can buy them out?" Penelope asked. "I do not want to be tied to them any longer than necessary." Harrison did some calculations, factoring in land values and the ranch's assets. "It would take considerable capital. Do you have access to such funds?" Penelope's heart sank. "No. Everything I have is tied up in the ranch itself." "What if she had a partner?" Zachary asked quietly. "Someone who could provide the necessary capital in exchange for a stake in the ranch." Harrison looked between them, understanding dawning in his eyes. "That would be one solution, yes, though such partnerships are often formalized through marriage to avoid any legal complications." Zachary turned to Penelope. "We talked about courting properly, taking our time. But maybe the situation calls for a different approach. I have savings, enough to buy out your brothers and invest in improvements to the ranch. I have experience managing cattle and land, and I have feelings for you that I believe could grow into love, given time and chance." Penelope's heart was racing. "Are you proposing a marriage of convenience?" "I am proposing a marriage of partnership," Zachary corrected. "One based on mutual respect and common goals and the hope of something deeper. I will not lie and claim to know exactly what I feel, because it has only been a few weeks. But I know I care for you, I know I admire you, and I know I want to see what we could build together." It was not the romantic proposal of novels and dreams. But as Penelope looked at Zachary, at his honest face and steady eyes, she realized it was something better. It was real and practical and based on the truth of who they both were. "Yes," she said, "let us be partners." They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Trinity, with Mr. Harrison and his wife as witnesses. Penelope wore a dress she had sewn herself from blue calico, and Zachary wore his best suit, brushed clean of trail dust. The minister seemed somewhat puzzled by the hasty wedding, but he performed the ceremony with proper solemnity. Afterward, They went directly to the lawyer's office to sign the papers that would buy out Raymond and Thomas Bradford's shares of the ranch. The brothers appeared with obvious reluctance, their expressions murderous but their hands tied by legal necessity. They took the money Zachary offered, but Raymond could not resist one final threat. "You will regret this, Penelope. Both of you will." "The only thing I regret is believing you were family," Penelope replied, her voice steady and cold. "We are done now. Do not come near me or my husband again." The word husband felt strange on her tongue, but also right somehow. She and Zachary walked out of the office together, legally wed and legally in control of the Bradford ranch. The next months were a whirlwind of activity. They decided to keep both ranches running, with Zachary managing his original property and Penelope overseeing her family's land with his support and advice. They hired hands they could trust, good men who respected Penelope's authority and worked hard for fair wages. Living together as husband and wife was an adjustment. They had given each other the gift of time, agreeing that their marriage would develop at its own pace without pressure or expectations. Zachary slept in one room and Penelope in another, but they spent their days working side by side, their evenings talking before the fire. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the partnership became something more. It was in the way Zachary would touch the small of her back when passing her in a doorway, the way Penelope would lean into his shoulder when they sat together. It was in the long looks and the laughter, in the moments when their hands would brush and neither would pull away. One evening in late February, as winter began loosening its grip on Texas, they sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire and gold. The land stretched peaceful around them, and Penelope felt a contentment she had never known before. "I think I am falling in love with you," she said quietly, surprising herself with the confession. Zachary turned to her, his expression soft in the fading light. "I know I am falling in love with you. Have been for weeks now, but I did not want to rush you or make you feel obligated." "I do not feel obligated. I feel fortunate." Penelope took his hand, threading their fingers together. "You saved my life that morning, but you have done so much more than that. You gave me back my freedom, my dignity, my hope for the future." "You did that yourself," Zachary said. "I just happened to be there at the right moment." "No," Penelope insisted. "You chose to stop, chose to help, chose to stand by me when it would have been easier to walk away. That was not chance or fate. That was you being the man you are." Zachary lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with gentle reverence. "May I kiss you properly, please?" Penelope whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she met him halfway. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I would like to truly be your wife," Penelope said, blushing but determined. "If you still want me." "I have wanted you since the day I found you," Zachary admitted. "I just wanted you to be sure to choose me freely without feeling indebted or pressured." "I am sure, and I am choosing freely." Penelope stood, pulling him up with her. "Take me to bed, husband." That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and patience, with care for her still healing body and attention to her comfort and pleasure. It was not perfect or polished, but it was real and meaningful, the physical expression of feelings that had been growing steadily between them. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Zachary whispered against her hair, "I love you, Penelope Garrett." "I love you too," she replied, and meant it with her whole heart. The seasons turned and their love deepened with each passing day. Spring brought new calves and fresh grass, long days of work and longer nights of learning each other's bodies and hearts. Summer blazed hot and bright, and they swam together in the creek that ran through the property, scandalizing no one because they were alone on their own land. Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and the work of preparing for winter, of selling cattle and stocking supplies. A year after their marriage, Penelope realized she was pregnant. She told Zachary over breakfast, watching his face transform from surprise to joy so profound it brought tears to both their eyes. "Are you happy?" she asked, though she could see the answer written clear on his face. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Zachary said, coming around the table to embrace her carefully. "You have given me everything I never knew I wanted. A true partner, a love that grows stronger every day, and now a child. How could I be anything but grateful?" Their son was born in early May of 1885, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and soaked the earth. The midwife from Trinity came to help, and Zachary waited outside the bedroom door, pacing and praying until he heard the infant's first cry. They named him Samuel, after Penelope's father, and he was perfect in every way. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's brown eyes, and he transformed their lives completely. Zachary proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Samuel at night, changing diapers without complaint, and staring at his son with such obvious wonder that it made Penelope fall in love with him all over again. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, and they named her Sarah after Zachary's lost sister. She had blonde curls and a stubborn streak a mile wide, and she wrapped her father around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Zachary would sit with her for hours, telling her stories about her aunt in heaven, making sure that Sarah's memory lived on through the new life they had created. The ranches thrived under their joint management. Penelope's ideas about selective breeding and rotational grazing proved successful, and their cattle were sought after throughout Texas. They earned a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock, and their home became known as a place where drifters could find a meal and honest work without judgment. They occasionally saw Raymond and Thomas in Trinity, but the brothers kept their distance after Zachary made it clear that any harassment of his family would be met with legal and physical consequences. Eventually, the Bradfords sold their remaining property and left Texas entirely, and Penelope felt nothing but relief at their departure. On their 5th anniversary, Zachary took Penelope back to the place where he had found her that cold November dawn. The barn was gone now, torn down and replaced with a new structure, but the spot was still recognizable. "I almost did not stop that morning," he admitted. "I was exhausted from the drive, eager to get home, and I almost rode right past. Sometimes I wake up in the night, terrified by the thought of what would have happened if I had made that choice." Penelope took his hand, squeezing tight. "But you did not ride past. You stopped, you helped, you saved me. And I like to think I saved you too, in a way. You were alone, carrying guilt that was not yours to carry. We healed each other." "We did," Zachary agreed. "And we will keep healing each other, keep building this life for as long as we both shall live." "That sounds like a vow," Penelope said softly. "It is. One I make again, freely and gladly, every single day." They stood together in the Texas sunlight, surrounded by land they had fought for and built upon, with their children playing nearby and their future stretching bright before them. The past, with all its pain and terror, was just that, past. What mattered was the present, the choice to love and be loved, the commitment to stand together no matter what came. Years continued to pass, marked by the steady rhythm of ranch life and the growing up of their children. Samuel proved to have his father's way with horses, and his mother's quick mind for figures. By the time he was 12, he was helping manage the books and planning breeding programs with insight beyond his years. Sarah was more interested in the land itself, in the way cattle moved and grazed, in the health of the grass and the flow of water. She would ride out with her father, learning to read the weather and the seasons, to understand the delicate balance that made ranching possible. 2 more children came in the following years, another boy named Michael and a baby girl they called Rose. The house that had once seemed spacious now burst with noise and life, with muddy boots by the door and children's laughter ringing from the rafters. Zachary and Penelope navigated the chaos together, presenting a united front through every childhood illness, every scraped knee, every adolescent crisis. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, they would sit together on the porch and watch the stars emerge. Sometimes they talked about their days, solving problems and making plans. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, simply being together. And sometimes Zachary would tell the story of that November dawn, making sure Penelope knew she was remembered not as a victim but as a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had refused to let cruelty define her. "You ever regret it?" Penelope asked one such evening when they were both well into their 40s and their children were grown or nearly so. "Taking on my problems, my damaged family, my difficult past." Zachary looked at her in genuine surprise. "Regret loving you. Regret our children, our life, everything we have built. How could I possibly regret the best decision I ever made?" "It could have been easier," Penelope pointed out. "You could have married someone without complications, without trauma, without brothers who wanted to kill you." "Easier is not better," Zachary said firmly. "And you are not your trauma or your complications. You are the woman I love, the mother of my children, my partner in every way that matters. If I could go back and change anything about our story, I would not. Every moment, good and difficult, brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be." Penelope leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the steady beat of his heart. After more than 20 years together, he could still make her feel cherished and valued, still looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. "I love you," she said, simple words that carried the weight of decades. "I love you too," Zachary replied, kissing the top of her head. "Always have, always will." As their children grew and started families of their own, the ranch expanded to accommodate the next generation. Samuel married a school teacher from Trinity and built a house on the eastern section of the property. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son, combining their lands and creating one of the largest spreads in that part of Texas. Michael went to college, studying agriculture and bringing back new ideas that pushed the ranch into the modern era. Rose became a teacher herself, educating ranch children in a small schoolhouse they built specifically for that purpose. Through it all, Zachary and Penelope remained the heart of the family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They aged gracefully together, silver threading through their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes. They still worked the land, though they left more of the heavy labor to younger hands. They still sat on their porch in the evenings, still reached for each other in the night, still chose each other every single day. In 1923, 40 years after that fateful dawn, Zachary became ill. The doctor called it cancer and said there was nothing to be done. He declined rapidly, his strong body finally failing after decades of hard work and good living. Penelope never left his side, sleeping in a chair next to their bed, holding his hand through the pain and the fading. On a warm May morning, with his wife and children surrounding him, Zachary Garrett took his last breath. His final words were for Penelope, a whispered, "Thank you for letting me love you." Penelope wept then, the tears of a woman who had loved deeply and been loved in return, who had found salvation in the arms of a good man and built a life beyond her darkest imaginings. The family mourned together, celebrating Zachary's life and legacy, the ripples of goodness that extended from one choice to stop and help on a cold November dawn. In the years that followed, Penelope continued to live on the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, watching the family grow and thrive. She told the story often, making sure every generation knew how their family began, how love and courage and simple human decency had changed everything. She lived to be 83, sharp-minded and independent until the very end. When she finally passed peacefully in her sleep, her family buried her next to Zachary under the wide Texas sky on the land they had built together. Her tombstone bore a simple inscription: "Beloved wife, mother, and survivor, she chose love." The ranch continued, passed down through generations, a living testament to what two people could create when they chose each other, chose kindness, chose hope. Children played where cattle grazed. Love stories unfolded under the same stars that had witnessed that first meeting. And the legacy of Zachary and Penelope Garrett lived on in every person who called that land home. Their story became family legend, told and retold, a reminder that salvation can come at dawn, that broken things can heal, that love is a choice made daily and a gift given freely. It was a story of the Wild West, yes, with its hardness and violence, its struggles and sorrows. But more than that, it was a story of hope, of two souls finding each other in the darkness and creating light, of partnership and respect, and a love that transcended the circumstances of its beginning to become something beautiful and enduring and true.